The alien girl had only one rule: never touch her pet. It wasn't a normal pet. It was taller than a human, with teeth like crystal blades and fur that glowed under the moon. Even her own people kept their distance, but the human didn't. Listen, he walked right up to the creature, holding nothing but a bucket of water and a bar of soap. Everyone expected blood. Instead, something happened no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. And it changed everything. Ethan had been in Lyra's village for only 3 days, but he had already learned one thing: her pet was not like anything he had ever seen. It stood as tall as his shoulders, its body covered in long blue fur that shimmered like starlight. Its eyes glowed a deep amber, and when it breathed, the air around its mouth seemed to ripple. Everyone in the village gave it a wide space. Even Lyra, who called it hers, never touched it unless she had to. That morning, Ethan saw the creature returning from the forest. Its beautiful fur was tangled and full of dust and mud. Something about the way it moved made Ethan think it was tired, maybe even uncomfortable. Lyra noticed him watching and said quietly, "Don't go near it. Not now." But Ethan didn't listen. He went to the small washing area beside the stream, filled a bucket with water, and found a piece of soft soap. Lyra frowned as she saw him walking toward the creature. A few villagers stopped what they were doing and turned to watch. No one had ever seen an outsider approach it. The creature lifted its head when Ethan came close, its amber eyes fixed on him, sharp and alert. For a moment, it was completely still. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She was ready to shout for him to stop, but Ethan moved slowly, showing the bucket first, then the soap, as if explaining what he wanted to do. To her shock, the creature didn't move away. Instead, it lowered its head slightly, almost like it was curious. Ethan reached out and let his hand hover just above its fur. When it didn't react, he let his fingers brush gently through the tangled hair. The sound that came next froze the entire village. A low, strange rumble, soft, deep, and not angry. Ethan smiled, as if he understood. He dipped the soap in the water and began to work it gently into the fur. At first, the creature stood still, watching him. Then its breathing slowed, and it almost seemed to relax under his touch. Lyra couldn't believe it. She had grown up with this creature, and not once had it allowed anyone to touch it like that. It was supposed to be proud and untamed, but here, it was letting a human wash it like a pet from a child's home. Some of the younger villagers whispered among themselves. One of the elders stepped closer, his brow furrowed, as if he was trying to understand what he was seeing. Ethan kept working, rinsing the soap out with careful hands, making sure not to pull the fur. He even hummed a soft tune one Lyra had never heard before. The creature tilted its head slightly, listening. Its tail, usually stiff and motionless, moved once, a slow, sweeping motion that made the onlookers murmur in surprise. Lyra stepped closer without thinking. She had never seen her companion so calm, not even when it slept. As the last of the soap was rinsed out, the sunlight caught the clean blue fur, making it shine like water under a bright sky. Ethan smiled and stepped back, letting the creature shake itself dry. Drops of water flew in every direction, and a few villagers laughed quietly. But then something even stranger happened. The creature stepped toward Ethan and lowered its head to his chest, pressing it there for a brief moment before walking away. Lyra felt her heart skip. That simple gesture meant something she had only heard about in old stories. Ethan didn't notice her reaction. He was too busy drying his hands on a cloth, acting as if what had happened was completely normal. Lyra, however, could feel the weight of the eyes around her. The villagers had seen it too, and she knew they would start talking. Later, as Ethan sat by the fire eating, Lyra stood a few steps away, watching him. "Why did you do that?" she asked finally. He looked up. "It needed cleaning." "You don't understand," she said softly. "It doesn't let anyone touch it, not even me." Ethan only shrugged, a small smile on his lips. Maybe it just needed someone to try. Lyra had no answer, but deep down, she knew this was not something simple. In her world, creatures like hers chose who they trusted, and once they did, it was forever. Far away, in the shadows near the forest's edge, someone else had been watching. A tall figure, wrapped in a dark cloak, turned and disappeared into the trees. The smile on his face suggested he understood exactly what had just happened, maybe even more than Lyra or Ethan, and somewhere in her chest, Lyra felt a flicker of unease. She didn't know why, but she could sense that today's bath was only the beginning of something far bigger. That night, the village was quieter than usual. A thin silver moon hung above, casting a soft glow over the houses and the open square. Lyra sat near her small window, staring at the creature lying outside. Its fur was still shining faintly from the afternoon bath, and every so often, it would lift its head and glance toward the guest house where Ethan was resting. Lyra had seen her companion act protective before, but this was different. The look in its eyes was softer, warmer, almost like it was guarding something precious. She didn't understand how a stranger from another world could have earned that kind of trust. In just one day, unable to sleep, she stepped outside and crossed the quiet path to where Ethan was sitting under the open porch, a small lantern beside him. He was polishing the same metal water bucket he had used earlier, his expression calm. "You could have been hurt," she began, her voice low. Ethan glanced up, smiling faintly. "But I wasn't. That's not the point," Lyra replied, folding her arms. "You don't know what that moment meant. It has never let anyone touch it like that, not even me. And when it put its head against you." She trailed off, uncertain whether to share what she had been told as a child. Ethan waited, but she shook her head. "It's nothing." He didn't press for answers. Instead, he looked toward the creature, which was now lying with its head resting on its massive paws, eyes half closed but still watching them. "Where I come from," Ethan said slowly, "animals don't speak our language, but they understand kindness. Maybe that's all it needed." Lyra considered his words, but found no comfort in them. In her people's stories, such gestures from the creature were rare signs of a deeper connection, one that could not be undone. And connections like that often brought change, sometimes in ways no one could predict. As the night grew colder, a soft sound came from the edge of the square. The creature's ears twitched, and it lifted its head sharply. Lyra turned her gaze toward the shadows. For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of movement between the trees. But when she looked again, there was nothing. Ethan noticed her expression. "Something wrong?" "Probably just the wind," she said quickly, though her tone carried a small doubt. The next morning, word had already spread through the village. Some smiled at Ethan as he passed, as if curious about the stranger who had done the impossible. Others kept their distance, whispering behind their hands. Lyra walked beside him, hearing every hushed voice, feeling the weight of their stares. When they reached the well, two elders approached. Their faces were lined with age and caution. "We heard about yesterday," one of them said, his voice gentle but firm. "It is not a small thing, human." Ethan looked at them, unsure what to say. "I just wanted to help," the other elder exchanged a glance with Lyra. "Help, yes, but this bond, it changes things. Our customs do not take such acts lightly." Before Ethan could ask what that meant, the creature stepped forward from where it had been resting, placing itself between him and the elders. It stood tall, calm but unyielding, as if making its own statement. A quiet ripple moved through the small crowd that had gathered. Lyra felt her chest tighten. In her mind, she could still hear the warning her grandmother once gave: "If it chooses someone, that choice will echo through more than one life." The elders stepped back slightly, their expressions unreadable. "We will speak more of this soon," one of them said before walking away. Ethan turned to Lyra. "Did I just get in trouble for giving it a bath?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the creature, which now stood at his side like a silent guardian. She didn't know if this was the beginning of something good, or something that would pull them all into a path they couldn't turn away from. The morning mist still clung to the ground when Lyra awoke to a faint sound outside her window. It was not the usual hum of the village. It was softer, almost like a low whisper. She rose quietly and looked out. The creature was awake, standing at the edge of the open field, its head turned toward the forest. Its body was tense, every line of muscle alert. Ethan was already outside, sitting on the steps of the porch with a cup in his hand. His eyes followed the creature's gaze. "It's been doing that since before sunrise," he said when Lyra joined him, "like it's waiting for something." Lyra narrowed her eyes at the tree line. The forest beyond the village was thick and deep, a place her people only entered when necessary. "It doesn't stare at the forest without a reason," she murmured. Before either of them could say more, the creature gave a low rumble, one that made the air seem to vibrate. It stepped forward, but only a few paces, then stopped. Its tail swayed once, slow and deliberate. Ethan frowned. "Is that a warning?" Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, that's what it does when something is there but it doesn't know if it's friend or foe." The rest of the village was waking now. Doors opened, voices began to rise, but the creature's focus never shifted from the trees. A few villagers noticed and began whispering to each other, glancing at Ethan. Some looked uneasy, as if this change in the creature's behavior was somehow connected to him. By midday, the elders had called for Lyra. They met in the small stone hall at the center of the village. The air inside was cool and heavy, carrying the scent of burning herbs. 3 of the oldest council members sat in a row, their eyes sharp and unreadable. "The bond has begun," one of them said without greeting. Lyra's pulse quickened. "You're certain?" "We saw it ourselves," the elder continued. "The way it stood before him yesterday, the way it watches him now. This is not simple affection. It is choosing." Lyra swallowed, unsure if she was ready to hear the rest. "And if it has chosen?" Another elder leaned forward slightly. "Then it will guard him, it will follow him, and those who wish to harm him will have to face it first. But there are others who may try to take it from him." The words made her think instantly of the flicker of movement she had seen in the trees the night before. "There's someone out there," she said. "I saw them." The elders exchanged glances, their expressions darkening. "Then you must be watchful," one of them said. "The forest hides many eyes." When Lyra stepped outside, Ethan was waiting near the hall. "That didn't look like a friendly meeting," he said. She shook her head but didn't explain. Instead, she asked, "Did you see anyone in the forest?" "Not clearly," he replied, "but I felt it, like being followed." The creature was beside him again, quiet and still. Its gaze kept drifting to the trees, as if it knew more than either of them. That evening, the village seemed unusually still. The usual laughter of the children, the soft clatter of tools, the sound of cooking, everything felt muted, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Ethan sat by the fire, and Lyra joined him, her eyes scanning the edges of the light. When the wind shifted, the creature suddenly stood, ears twitching. It moved toward the edge of the square and gave that same low rumble as in the morning. Ethan rose slowly, looking past it into the shadows. There, for the briefest moment, a figure was visible, tall, cloaked, and still. Then it turned and slipped back into the forest without a sound. Ethan looked at Lyra. "I think your pet just saved us from meeting someone we weren't supposed to meet tonight." Lyra didn't answer right away. Her thoughts were tangled with the elders' warnings. She knew now that whoever was in the forest hadn't just come for the village. They had come for the creature, and because of the bond, that meant they had come for Ethan. The following morning, a deep, steady drumbeat echoed across the village square. It was the signal for all to gather, a sound used only for matters the council deemed urgent. Lyra and Ethan stepped out from the guest house to see villagers leaving their homes, some curious, some tense. The creature walked alongside them, its head held high, eyes alert. The council stood at the center of the square, their long robes swaying gently in the early breeze. One of the elders raised a hand for silence. "Yesterday and the days before, we have all witnessed something that has not happened for generations," he said, his voice carrying to every ear. "The Guardian has chosen, and it has chosen a human." A wave of murmurs moved through the crowd. Some looked at Ethan with interest, others with unease. Ethan stayed still, unsure whether to be proud or worried. "This bond is not without responsibility," another elder continued. "If the Guardian's trust has been placed in you, it must be proven that the trust is deserved. We do not leave such bonds untested." Ethan glanced at Lyra, who met his eyes but said nothing. She knew this was coming. Tradition demanded it. "What kind of test?" he asked finally. The eldest among them stepped forward. "A trial of harmony. The Guardian will be placed in a space of challenge, and you must guide it without force. Only if it responds to you willingly will the bond be recognized." The announcement brought a hush over the crowd. Lyra felt her stomach tighten. The trial was not meant to harm the Guardian, but it was designed to unsettle it, to see if its loyalty could be broken. The preparations began at once. The open arena at the far side of the village was cleared. High walls of woven branches and stone formed a circle with narrow gates on either side. The air there was different still, but heavy with the sense of wild things. Ethan and Lyra stood outside one of the gates while the creature paced within. "You can still refuse," Lyra told him quietly. "Would that help?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, it would only make them think you fear it. And if they believe the bond is false, you'll never be safe here." Before Ethan could answer, a horn sounded. The far gate opened, and the first part of the trial began. Strange noise is echoed through the arena, low growls, sharp cries, rustling movements that seemed to come from all directions. The creature's ears twitched, its eyes shifting to track unseen shapes. Ethan stepped forward, speaking in a calm, steady voice. He didn't shout or command. He simply talked to it as he had during the bath. "It's all right. Just us here. Nothing to worry about." The growls grew louder, but the creature stayed beside him. It took a few slow steps, matching his pace. Around them, shadows moved, shapes darted between the walls, more illusions than real danger. Meant to test the mind, the elders watched from a high platform. Some nodded quietly. Others leaned forward, searching for signs of fear or hesitation. Then, from the opposite gate, a new sound emerged, heavier, sharper. The air seemed to change. Lyra recognized it instantly, and her breath caught. "They brought in another Guardian," she whispered. Ethan looked up as a larger, darker creature stepped into the arena. Its fur was thick and coarse, its eyes a bright, fierce gold. It scanned the space, spotted them, and began to approach. With slow, deliberate steps, the Guardian beside Ethan lowered its head slightly, a quiet sound rising in its throat. The two creatures stood facing each other, the air between them tight with unspoken challenge. Lyra held her breath. This was the heart of the trial, the moment that would decide whether the bond could endure pressure from its own kind. Ethan, without moving too quickly, placed a hand on his Guardian's neck. "Stay with me," he said softly. The larger creature stepped closer, muscles tensed. For a moment, it seemed ready to advance further, but then Ethan's Guardian let out a deep, rumbling note, calm yet commanding. The larger creature paused, blinked slowly, and then turned away, retreating toward the far gate. The trial ended in silence. Then, from the council platform, the eldest elder spoke. "The bond stands." A ripple of voices filled the arena, some in approval, some in surprise. Ethan looked at Lyra, unsure if he should feel relief or prepare for what came next, because in the back of her mind, she knew that a trial passed so easily would only make those watching from the forest even more determined. And they were still out there. The sun was slipping low in the sky, painting the clouds with soft gold. When the trial ended, the villagers slowly returned to their homes, their conversations low but filled with curiosity. Some looked at Ethan with respect now, others with something harder to read, something between envy and caution. The Guardian walked at Ethan's side, calm as the evening breeze, its fur catching the light. Lyra walked slightly behind, her mind heavy with thoughts. Passing the trial was rare for anyone, but passing it so smoothly was almost unheard of. It was not just proof of trust, it was a sign of something deeper. When they reached the small guest house, Ethan sat on the porch steps, running his fingers through the Guardian's fur. "I'm starting to think it just likes the attention," he joked softly. Lyra smiled faintly but didn't laugh. "You don't understand yet," she said. "It didn't just stay with you in the trial. It chose to protect you in front of everyone. That means it will stand against anything, even its own kind, if you are in danger." Ethan looked at her, his smile fading. "That sounds like a good thing." "It is," she admitted. "But it also means you've been marked. Anyone who wants the Guardian's loyalty now knows they must take it from you first." As if hearing her words, the Guardian lifted its head and turned toward the forest. Its ears twitched, its eyes sharp. Ethan followed its gaze but saw nothing. Lyra's shoulders tightened. "They're still watching," she whispered. That night, the village seemed quieter than usual. The fires burned lower, and the usual music and chatter were absent. Ethan sat with Lyra outside, the guardian lying between them like a silent wall of protection. The air was cool, carrying the scent of the nearby river. Suddenly, a faint sound came from beyond the last row of houses, a soft rustle, followed by a low hum. The guardian's head lifted instantly, its muscles tensing. Lyra rose to her feet. Scanning the darkness, the sound faded, but the feeling it left behind stayed like a shadow on the skin. Before Ethan could ask what it was, the village messenger appeared, a young boy with wide eyes. "The council calls for you both," he said, glancing nervously at the guardian before hurrying away. Inside the council hall, the elders were waiting, their faces lit by a single large lantern. "The trial has ended," one of them began, "but it has opened a path we must now follow." Ethan glanced at Lyra, but she stayed silent. "The guardian's choice has stirred attention beyond our walls," another elder said. "We have received word there are those in the outer lands who believe the creature's bond can be broken and remade. They will come." Ethan frowned. "Why? What could they possibly gain from taking it?" The eldest elder's voice was calm but heavy. "Power. The guardian is not simply a protector. In the old ways, it is a symbol of leadership. To have it stand beside you is to claim a place above others." The words settled between them like stone. Lyra finally spoke. "Then we must keep it safe." "That means keeping him safe, too," the elders agreed. But their tone carried worry. "We cannot guard against what we cannot see. Whoever is in the forest has not yet revealed their hand. Until they do, you must be watchful." When they left the hall, the night air felt sharper. The guardian walked close to Ethan, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Lyra's steps were quiet, but her thoughts were loud. This bond was now more than an unusual friendship. It was a signal to the world. As they reached the edge of the square, Ethan spoke softly. "You said it would protect me, but who protects it?" Lyra looked at him, her gaze steady. "We do. From now on, we both do." Somewhere far beyond the tree line, a cloaked figure watched the village lights flicker against the night. His voice was barely a whisper. "Soon." The hall was silent except for the faint hum of the crystal pillars that lined its edges. She stood at the center, her crown shimmering under the golden lights, but her eyes were fixed only on him. The grand audience, nobles, scholars, and emissaries from far-off worlds watched in stillness. Sensing something about to happen that was not in the official plan, he walked forward slowly, his boots making the lightest sound on the polished floor. The long ceremonial cloth that stretched between them seemed to pull tighter with every step, as if the air itself recognized the moment's weight. His thoughts were a swirl of questions. Why him? Why here? Why now? But her gaze offered no answers, only a quiet assurance that whatever was about to be revealed had been waiting for this moment. For a very long time, when he stopped just a few steps away, she lifted her hand. In her palm rested a small sphere of light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The glow reflected in his eyes, and for a second, he forgot the crowd, the crown, and the ceremony. She spoke in a soft tone, her words meant only for him, though the entire hall leaned forward to listen. "This is not just a gift," she said. "It is a promise, one that cannot be broken." He hesitated before reaching out, sensing there was more hidden within that light than she was saying. The moment his fingers brushed it, warmth spread through his arm, not heat, but a deep calm, as though 1,000 unspoken truths had just settled into place. The sphere vanished, leaving behind a faint mark on his skin, shaped like the symbol on her crown. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some stood in disbelief, others whispered urgently, their voices overlapping like a rising tide. The elders exchanged knowing looks, but none dared speak out loud. He looked at her, searching for meaning, but she only smiled, as if telling him silently that the answers would come later when the world was ready. Then, she stepped closer, closing the distance between them until the folds of her gown brushed against him. The music that had been playing in the background shifted into a low, almost ethereal tone. She leaned in just enough for him to hear her next words, ones that would stay with him for the rest of his life. "From this moment, you are bound to my world as I am bound to yours." The hall erupted, not in cheers, not in protest, but in a sound unlike any he had ever heard before, a mix of awe and acceptance, as if history itself had just been rewritten in front of their eyes. And though he still didn't understand all of it, he knew one thing for certain: whatever path lay ahead, it had just begun, and there was no turning back.